So, you've told me a little bit about yourself, but Shon, who are you, really?
Seriously, I'm an imperfect man called to serve a perfect God. That's it. So in what I'm learning for me is allowing myself to trust the process. People don't love you, but sometimes when you're dealing with or have the trust issues, you build what is called walls. It takes time. There's a process to it. And for all of us, we all go through a process. And many times we want to jump out the oven fast and we're not cooked all the way. And we wonder why our skill set is right, our experience, and we can't handle what the world throws at us is because we jump out too fast. So
Welcome to the I'm Dealing With broadcast. I'm Anna, your host, and this is the start of Season 3, The Release.
welcome to the I'm Dealing With broadcast. Once again, you already know who I am. I'm Shon, the original host of the I'm Dealing With broadcast. Today, we are actually going to be in the hot seat where I'm going to be interviewed. As you've already heard, the voice of Anna. She's going to be taking over. And again, this is Season 3, The Release. And this is the first installment as we will go through different chapters and barriers of things to bring about understanding. So I'm going to turn the rest of the podcast over to Anna at this point. So stay tuned and we're going to get right into it. Here we go.
Shon, what is I'm dealing with and why?
Wow. It's amazing because I'm Dealing With was birthed out of helping men, because many times we found in Christendom where men, women have plenty of platforms to get encouragement. There's there's a woman's there's a woman's platform for them to learn different things, to express themselves, because after all, women been trained to be nurturers of each other. But the question is where do men go? Where do men go to get encouragement? Where do men go to listen or hear someone say, I understand you, I hear your heart, and then not be condemned, not be brought down? So God gave me this last year to start this year in dealing with men where they are, not just what they could be, but where they are, meeting them in, even if they're in the slums, in depression, even if they're dealing with anxiety, even if they're dealing with a lot of things that are going on in life that has been transpiring that no one listens to, because many times we as men, we hide things. We hide many of things. We don't communicate to anybody because we've been taught to be, I'm mad, I'm strong. We don't share. And that's kind of how we've been taught. We've never been taught to be nurturers. We've never been taught to be men who actually will share their heart, to lean on somebody else. We've been taught to hold it all in and not be a punk. But this was birthed out of just the simple fact of men understand, because who else understands a man like a man? Who understands the heart of a man like a man? Our uprisings, our downsettings, the things where we have our flaws, the things that we're great at, but then also some of the things that we're weak at. Because even with men alone, sometimes we don't want to share amongst ourselves, amongst other men, because we don't want to be judged. We don't want to be ridiculed. We want to be found less of a man. So this platform is where men can listen, share, and be understood, and go, you know what, man, I'm glad you said that. That was me. I was just there yesterday, or I'm going through that right now, and I'm glad you shared that point. And the goal is to have an honest platform where men can listen. But then at the same time, even still, it's not just for men, even though that's what it's geared to. It's really for the men and the ladies that love us, because after all, women have men that are attached to them. They have sons, they have brothers, they have husbands, maybe even a boyfriend, maybe an uncle, maybe a father or a grandfather that they have to understand because they're either taking care of them or they're trying to learn how to love them where they are, because again, men, we're not sharing like we should. So that's what this platform is for. It's for us to be able to come together and have an area where we can be who we are without judgment, without ridicule, without being talked about. And that's really what this platform is about. That's why I did it.
Excellent. So, Shon, tell me a little bit about Shon Bowdan.
Wow. I need a cough drop for that one. Who am I? I'm a guy that I love hard. I'm a guy who has flaws. I'm talented in many areas. I've learned skills. I have been a person to where I have learned how to operate without people being around. I've also learned how to feel alone, even in the midst of being around thousands of people. I've learned how to occupy my time, and hence I've learned a lot of traits and skills because I've been left alone. And I think sometimes when especially for myself, when I'm left alone, not, sidetracked, but sometimes especially me being left alone, ignored, like I don't matter. You find ways and different things to occupy your time. And that's what I did. I found ways to occupy my time, one of which was learning car audio way back in the day. And that was because many people had a lot of friends, had a lot of acquaintances and things of that sort. And even though I had people I knew, I really didn't have anybody that I can say that I can call my own, that were my personal friends. And even later on, I did have some, personal friends, but then they also had people that they were close to. So I then had to learn how to be alone. I had to learn how to be by myself. I had to learn how to watch others soar, watch others' friendships and relationships soar while I'm in this lonely atmosphere. And I learned different things. I would start reading and all these different things. I learned crafts. I started building. I started cutting metal and all these different things to occupy my time. And it's because of, people, if you want to say, ignoring me or saying that I don't matter, even though they're not saying it. Sometimes it's what you do that makes a person understand that you don't matter. And I've learned how to do that. And in this loneliness, if you want to call it that, I've learned how to just be me and accept the fact that I'm not going to be valuable to everybody. Not everyone values who you are. Not everybody values your gift, or sometimes they value your gift, but they don't value you. And I found myself sometimes like my father before me, where his gift was being valued. What he could do was being valued. Being mechanical inclined, you're valued. As long as you can deliver something to someone who needs that service, you're valued. But outside of that, your friendship is not valued. Your voice is not valued. Your presence is not valued. And I've had to learn to operate in that, because some of the same things that he's had to go through, I've had to go through too. And in that, sometimes being devalued, you also lean on some other things. At one point in time, I leaned on alcohol, leaned on a bunch of different things, and there's just so much in that. But in the present, I've learned how to understand that there are things in my life that in my past, and if anybody's listened to some of the previous podcasts, they would know that there has been, plenty of flaws and different things in my life that I've had to realize I am who I am now because of what had happened then. And sometimes we don't correlate who we are until we understand where we've been, the things that have happened to us, the bad relationships or the mishandling through, if it's not parents, through other relationships, internal and external, maybe through your job atmosphere, maybe those relationships and things. And there's certain things that change who you are, and you operate in that because of what was. And it's only until you discover what was, when you find the root of the problem, and then you go, okay, that is the root of the problem. Now, either I'm going to operate in that or I'm going to change it. So I find myself more often than not changing what was so I can be what is.
So you've told me a little bit about yourself, but Shon, who are you, really?
Seriously? I'm an imperfect man called to serve a perfect God. That's it.
So with the subject of flaws, tell me about some of your flaws.
Okay. Truthfully, I have found myself many times feeling insignificant, belittled, trust. I've always had a serious trust issue. Rejection, valued. I think that's another thing that I've had that have been some of my flaws, is feeling, valued. The other thing is self-worth. My physical appearance. I mean, I've never liked my mouth. Let's put it that way. I've never liked my mouth. And for those that really know me, that know me long enough, if you go back to any of my pictures, even going back all the way to kindergarten, it's very rare. Let's just say if you found 1,000 pictures, you may find 3 pictures of that 1,000 that actually had me smiling. I very rarely smile because I didn't like what I saw. And to this day, I don't necessarily like what I see, but I think a lot of us many times don't necessarily like what we see in the mirror sometimes. And we do some things to cover that up. And we cover that up in, again, my skill. And in my flaws, I've covered a lot of my flaws up by learning new things to be better in this over here, though I struggle with this over here. To learn how to talk to you over here, but then I struggle with that over there. And I found myself making up for some of my flaws and areas that I lacked. And so those are just a few things. The other thing is, I think one of my other flaws is consistency. And the reason why I say consistency is because sometimes I find myself not being, going all the way. We were just having a thing earlier and we talked about going all the way, and where sometimes we start something and we don't finish it. We're gung-ho the first week, the first 6 months, the first year, the first whatever. And then all of a sudden there's a lapse in there. And then all of a sudden we kind of haphazardly, give some things. I've been working to be more consistent as to the things that definitely matter. Not necessarily to me, but to others as well. And mostly God, but more consistent, because it's one thing to say, I love what I do, or I love what I'm doing, or I love the relationship, or I love God, but then we show up every once in a while in those relationships and in those connections. So I'm learning I'm discovering and have discovered many of my flaws, and have been to the point to where I'm actually sharing now, these are the flaws that I've dealt with. These are the flaws that I've discovered through time. And these are the flaws that I'm working on to change, because it's only until I say, these are my flaws. These are, sometimes, one of the other ones used to be, I had to change it, but it was perfectionism. Everything just had to be lined up a certain way. Everything just had to be done a certain way to where, every T was crossed, every I was dotted, and it had to be like this, and it had to be this, that, and the other. And what had happened was it caused people to be pushed away. And I didn't understand why relationships failed. And it's only in discovering that my expectation of perfectionism and getting, things done perfectly, if you want to call it that I'd understand that how can I expect perfection when I am not perfect? How can I expect perfection in somebody else and I have yet to become that? So then I had to realize that in relationships and in building relationships with anybody, male, female, the job situation, being an entrepreneur, being a content creator, whatever it is that people do, I had to realize that it's not about perfectionism. It's about bringing excellence to it. Did you give it all you got? And so I've changed now that I don't expect perfection from me or anybody else. But what I've learned to expect is excellence. Give it everything you've got. So when people like, it has to be a certain way, and you're always, because I expect excellence out of I'm one of those people that either I want to be all in or I don't want to have nothing to do with it. Don't ask me to do, well, yeah, for instance, I was doing my business many years ago of home theater. And I had clients, or should I say they wanted to be clients, and would say to me, don't worry about this, that, and the other. Just punch a hole in the wall real quick and just shove the cables down there and I'll pay you for it. But that's not me. I can't just do it that way. There has to be a box in there. There has to be a certain way, because at the end of the day, if anybody comes in your home, if I do a half job, that reflects my brand. That reflects my business. That reflects who I am, because I also understand that you have at least 10 friends. So with those 10 friends, at least 8 of them might look at, it's like, man, who was that guy? That was kind of shady the way they did that. But if I provide excellence, then it's like, man, this is a good job. Who is that guy? Who is the business you use? And I found out when I give excellence to anything, not just to myself, but to my counterparts, to the people that I serve, it brings about extra business. It brings about better relationships. It brings about better things in my life when I give it my all. And when I don't give it my all, I can't complain about what I don't get.
So you've given a list of your flaws. So tell me in the audience, which flaw do you feel like you have to work on even more? I mean, I understand you talk about professionalism, being perfectionist. So out of your other flaws, which ones are you striving to just make sure, that you correct that, you grow from it, build upon it?
Trust. And the reason why I say trust, because being who I am, I'm a God-fearing man. I love God first before anything else. Before I love, my children, my family, before I love my skills and the different things, I love God first. So the hard thing for me is trust. Not necessarily trusting God, but trusting the process. And the hard thing for me, even when doing all this, as you all see, and from, season 1 to season 2, is knowing what I've been called to do. But sometimes when you've been called to do something and God has shown you what it's going to be, is a simple fact of trusting God in the midst of seeing that it's not there yet. And, it's one of those things that we all have to go through And for me, it's trusting the process, not necessarily trusting man, not trusting that I'm going to get treated right, but it's just trusting the process. It takes time. There's a process to it. And for all of us, we all go through a process. And many times we want to jump out the oven fast, and we're not cooked all the way. And we wonder why our skill set is right, our experience, and we can't handle what the world throws at us is because we jump out too fast. So in what I'm learning for me is allowing myself to trust the process, from the beginning to the middle, whether I'm on the mountain one day and then sometimes I find myself in the valley the next, is still trusting the process to know that where I'm at, where you are at, for those of you that are listening, that this is not your end, that this is just the process. It's just a season. It's just a season that we're in. And this season doesn't last always.
What are some of the consequences? Because, if you have an issue with trust, what are some of the consequences that you've had to deal with because of, the lack of trust?
Ooh, wow. When you are a person who has trust issues, you will find yourself isolated. You go into what is called isolation. And it's not the fact that people don't love you, but sometimes when you're dealing with or have the trust issues, you build what is called walls. And you have all these security measures. You got the alarms, you got the tank, you dug a ditch with moat in it and all this kind of stuff. You pulled the drawbridge up, and you find yourself isolated in this castle that you've built for yourself because of trust. And you wonder why when you come home, you're cooking for yourself. You wonder why no one is emailing you. No one's sending you text messages. No one's calling for your service because we have trust issues. And sometimes it's not the fault of the individual. Sometimes it's things in our past that have caused us to not trust. And for me, the trust has caused me to lose some relationships. And some of them are relationships that I felt were very important to me. Some relationships were very important to my family, my extended family, my current family, because of trust. And sometimes when you're dealing with trust, it brings on other things, to where now I can't depend on you. So you all of a sudden now you have a dependency issue, and then you have a resentment issue, because now that I have trust issue, now I'm resentful. And then not only that because you're resentful, now you have a hardened heart. Now I don't want to listen to you. Now I can't hear you. Now because you did something, or maybe you didn't do anything, and it caused trust issues and that. But because of the lack of trust has brought all these other words and all these different things, because now it can bring about a spirit of depression. It can bring about a anxiety when you lose trust and you have trust issues. You will actually start poking fun at different ones, and because of your own personal trust issues. Not only that, it brings about what is called insecurity, because when you're insecure in these trust issues because of trust, now you're looking at everything in life as if it's coming at me. Maybe I'm not worth it. Maybe I'm not worth this man or this woman, or I'm not worth this relationship, or I'm not worth this job because of my insecurity issues. And it all goes back to trust, because when we fail to trust, it brings back so much other stuff on top of the root cause of trust, the root cause of issues. And there's a lot that trust for me really hurt. A lot of my family has been hurt because of my trust issues, which caused insecurity, which caused a pricked heart, which caused a hardened heart. And and I'm trying to now, not just now, but being able to be honest with myself, not honest with people, but honest with myself, to be able to, number one, forgive myself, to be able to understand myself. Because many times I think that most of us are always looking through a window at what everybody else is seeing, instead of turning that window into a mirror and actually taking an intra perspective on ourselves and saying, you know what? It's my fault. I messed this up. I did this. And it's in this that we'll find what the root cause is to be able to fix it and move forward. So for me, yeah, trust really messed up a few things.
Okay. So as a male who have had trust issues, and you are at a place now where you have a understanding of the flaws and your trust, what would you recommend to the men in the audience? Let's say, like, if you have to deal with trust with your wife or trust with a girlfriend, how would you, what would you recommend for the audience on that?
You know, the hard thing is, you first, as I said before, you first have to identify and recognize what the root cause is, what the root causes are. Because if you don't deal with the root cause, no matter what, every little thing will remind you of what was. And until you deal with what was, whether it was from maybe trust because you were molested, maybe trust because you were hurt, maybe somebody robbed you of your heart, maybe someone left you, maybe they picked up and moved out of state, maybe you're dealing with abandonment issues and all that. You have to go back to what was the root cause of why the trust was misplaced in the first place. Because if in fact it is, you're dealing with a girlfriend, you're dealing with a boyfriend, you're dealing with a wife, or whatever that is that you're dealing with in your relationship, or even relationship with friends and workplaces, you have to be one who is willing to listen. Number one, you have to be willing to listen, because I find that many times everybody has an answer for everything, but no one has the heart to listen. We always have the answers. We're looking for them to hurry up and shut up so we can have a quick reply. But we don't have the heart to listen to what's being said. So when somebody says, hey, I'm dealing with this particular situation with this girl, whatever, sometimes even in that, you're just like, what's your hair up and talk so I can finish so I can tell them what to say. When in actuality, we should be saying, okay, so I heard you say that you're dealing with this situation. So tell me about the situation. What's happening? Because when you repeat it back to them, it lets them know that you heard them. It lets them know that they were important. And that builds trust even in generic relationships, whether it's people that you serve over or serve under. And then on top of that is even with your wife, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your husband, to where when they share, you have to be one that is willing to listen and understand that they are sharing with you their heart. Number one, they're sharing with you their heart, and you have to be one who is willing to appreciate the fact that they're sharing their heart, something that's sacred to them. And if you have trust issues, when someone shares their heart with you, you know what's going to happen? You're going to trample all over it. You're not going to respect it because no one ever respected you. So once you understand that, I have trust issues. I have a heart. I have trust issues, but it's really a heart problem because my heart was trampled on when I tried to share. And it's only until you realize that where you say, you know what? The buck stops with me. I'm going to make sure I do not take what was done to me in my next relationship, in my next job, into my next, whatever that is. But it all stems from the simple fact that you have to first be honest with yourself and say, this was the root cause.
So, with that being said, you can honestly say now that you're going to start smiling on your pictures.
Yeah,
We can expect smiles.
Oh man,
You're dealing with it.
I am. I'm dealing with. That was good. You threw me off on that one. Okay, so we're shutting this first installment down. Thank you all for listening. This is I'm Dealing With. You have heard Anna interviewing me, Shon. Stay tuned for the next installment as we take you deeper. Once again, this is I'm Dealing With. Stay true. And as always, stay blessed. Take care.